accessed the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Hey, fellow Owens, you're tuned in to the podcast of OA, episode number 202. I'm your co-host, Myron Rumsey, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about a number of Green Lantern-related DC comic books that came out recently. We're going to talk about DC Dark Knights of Steel number 1, DC vs. Vampires number 1, and Justice League Last Ride number 7. And joining me for this ride is my good friend Phil Bova. Phil, it's great to be back and talking comic books again. It
is. Sorry about the delay. I had to take a few days. We had another unfortunate death in a close family member, and but here we are talking about some great issues that have come out. I have some beef with a couple of them, but I'll get to that beef later.
Was it the lack of Simon Daz?
It was. Dang it. I needed more Simon in my life.
Well, it's just around the time here in the United States where we're getting ready to celebrate Thanksgiving. And for people that aren't in the United States, this is a day when we get together and celebrate the good blessings we have in our lives. And usually it's a big Thanksgiving turkey dinner and so on. And so I'm glad that Green Lantern fans are going to tune in and get a chance to listen to us before the holiday gets here. And we'll be back again for a conversation after that. But November also, this particular November, had a great anniversary in it. And that was back on November 11th of 2011. We had the very first episode of Green Lantern the Animated Series. So we just celebrated the 10-year anniversary of that fantastic show.
What a PR jam it would have been for WB to surprise people and release at season 2 on this date in this history, on that date in this history. But you come to think about it, they would never be that smart to do something like that because they're ignorant.
Yeah, it would have been kind of cool to have had just an announcement would have been good. But it seems like DC kind of let the day slip by and didn't do anything with it at all. It was up to us fans to note it.
Yeah, because DC fandom is such a stellar event again this year.
Well, we've got some great comics to talk about this week in this episode. I'm really excited. Three, which for me, I thought they were fun books, so I can't wait to talk about them.
Yeah, they were good. I will say that they were good.
So why don't we take a quick pause and we can do this episode's Know Your Core segment, and then we'll jump into it.
All right.
Yeah, in blackest day or brightest night, watermelon, cantaloupe, yada yada, a superstitious and cowardly lot, with liberty and justice for all.
Then again, maybe I should lead us. In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware our power, Green Lantern's light.
Yay, team!
Hello, fellow Owens. Welcome back to another Know Your Core segment. This week, we have the amazing Gorius Karkum. Gorius Karkum first appeared in Rebels number 16, July 2010. The character was created by Tony Bedard and Claude St. Aubin. His affiliation is the Green Lantern Corps Scions, with the home planet Scion Homeworld, and the sector of 2828. After the lift on the ban of Green Lanterns in the Vega system, Gorius Karkum was chosen from the Scion Homeworld to join the Green Lantern Corps. The first time she meets Legion, the former only policing force of the planetary system, she and her new partner, Alton Adams, have run in with Vil Drox II, causing animosity towards the latter. Luckily, she claimed her partner down enough to allow their more senior members to deal with the issue. And there you have it, Owens, another cool member of the Green Lantern Corps, Gorius Karkum.
This is Salak, Green Lantern of Sector 1418, and you are receiving the podcast of Oa.
The podcast of Oa.
All right, Phil. Well, the first book we're going to talk about this episode is Dark Knights of Steel. And this is a Tom Taylor book. You know, Tom Taylor, famous for his work on Injustice.
Mm-hmm.
And the art and the color of this one is by Yasmin Putri, who I've never seen that person's art before. So I like the artwork in this book. Yeah, the art was really, really good. And Tom Taylor, and the guy can write. Definitely, he's become quite prolific. Mm-hmm. And this is another one. I hesitate to use the term Elseworlds because that's kind of gone away, but this is obviously on another Earth in the Omniverse, and it's very, very, very sword and sorcery. And you know, it starts out in the very beginning. It starts out with Krypton and a ship, the planet blowing up, and a ship escaping Krypton to land on Earth. And you get about 3 pages in, and then you see where this really diverges from the DC universe that we're familiar with. You know, I kind of felt like this was like a re-imaging, you know what I mean, of an origin story. Yeah. Because it's modified in a way because Batman shows up in this one, obviously, you know, and it's tweaked in a way that there's like a little, and we'll get to that part later on in the book, but like, I kind of felt like, you know, I don't think of it as an Elseworlds. I think of this more as because Tom Taylor has this knack to take the DC universe and spin it and create a unique different lens on different things that are happening. And I think that's really, really where he thrives. I mean, because I really, really thoroughly enjoy this book, not only because it's medieval content, you know, with the history, but more so because of just a re-imaging tale, kind of like Red Sun when he landed in Soviet Russia. Yeah, it's like it's not upside down. It's twisted on a different axis. And it seems familiar. I mean, there are lots of things that are very, very familiar, but it's just different enough that it feels exciting and different. Mm-hmm. And you know, right away it happens on the 3rd page. The capsule pops open from Krypton, and it's not Kal-El that's in there. It's the Kent, not the Kents. Duh. It's Lara. Yeah, it's Lara. It's Jor-El and a very pregnant Superman's mom. Which is cool. It's a different take on it, but it suits the story arc of where it's going. You know. Yeah, and it's cool because we get to see what happens when the adults land, and they have superpowers, and they don't even realize it yet. You know, they're basically attacked immediately because they're a perceived threat coming from the stars, and Jor-El kind of wipes everybody out. And then Kal-El. Castle of El. The Castle of El. How cool is that? Yeah. You know, it jumps to the future eventually. But there's a really cool scene where, again, it's very familiar, the Kingdom of Storms, and you see Jefferson Pierce, a.k.a. Black Lightning, is the king of this particular kingdom. And Constantine is on Fitz on the floor having visions about what's going on. And there's lots of little teases and hints in what Constantine says, but he basically warns Jefferson Pierce that the arrival of these people from the stars threaten everything that everybody on this earth holds dear, and threatens to take over and put everybody in subservience to them. The only thing that was missing was Constantine's cigarette. Yeah, it would have been kind of cool to have him have like a long pipe or something. Yeah, something to that effect. That's right. He couldn't have a cigarette back then, but yeah, a different thing would have been cool. He looks really young in this too. Yeah. Well, and you figure they must be because this is when Superman arrives, and they're already basically either young people or young adults. And then that's true. He's not born yet. Yeah, and then we flash forward 19 years, and you've got Jor-El and a young Bruce Wayne, who are friends of a sort, and Bruce Wayne is essentially, you know, Batman armor, of course, and he's there to protect the Elves from the threats from afar, and they've banished in the Castle of El any magic whatsoever. And so Bruce is there to kind of protect the elves from these magical threats.
And then he's got this little group called the Robins.
Yeah. Again, a neat little twist.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just enough to where it's both inclusion and it's unique, you know, and it fits this frame of time too.
Absolutely, and I loved seeing Alfred. Alfred looks exactly the way you would think he would look in this kind of a Renaissance medieval time setting. And they're out. The Robins have basically found where a banshee who has come into the kingdom is sleeping, and so Bruce Wayne leaves the Robins outside as he goes in to deal with the banshee, and then you find that the banshee is Dinah Lance.
Again, different kind of spin.
Yeah, and it's funny because she kind of calls him, and again to keep it family friendly, basically calls him a name for an illegitimate child, and the Bat Prince, and basically he wants her to come quietly, and she lets loose as only Dinah Lance can do.
What a great scream!
Yeah, neat visual, and the interesting thing, and the thing that doesn't immediately stand out, but that Bruce doesn't really suffer too much damage, and even she questions, how are you still alive? Why aren't you torn to pieces? And he doesn't understand why. And as the story unravels, he believes he's cursed. That that he for some reason has been cursed for whatever reason, and that's why people call him the names that they do. And he isn't able to take out the banshee. I mean, he takes two shrieks, two canary cries, or banshee cries, if we want to stick to the nomenclature. He takes two banshee cries and doesn't die.
Until Superman shows up.
Yeah, and then he shows up. And then, they go back to the kingdom, and you see Harlequin, which, again, wonderful spin on Harlequin, because she's literally a Harlequin.
I mean, yeah, right? They don't have to do much with her. I mean, and she still has her quirky nature, too.
Yeah, has the quirky nature. Bruce isn't really Batman, so there isn't this, they call him the Dark Knight still. But she kind of, does what Harley Quinn does and kind of teases him about stuff and so on. And then Clark and Bruce get kind of called out in front of the parents, in front of the king and the queen, about the banshee and so on. And it's then that we really get a twist. There's a conversation, and Jor-El takes Bruce out to talk to him, and Jor-El confides in Bruce that he would be the chosen one to lead the kingdom, not Kal-El. And we find out that Bruce is Jor-El's son. That, in a twist on Batman versus Superman, Martha really is both of their his mother.
Well, just for the record, wouldn't that make Batman a bastard?
Yes. That is correct.
Good. No offense, Batman fans, but good.
But it also makes Clark and Bruce half brothers.
Half brothers, yeah. Which is kind of what I was thinking when he didn't take much damage, so that would mean he'd be like a hybrid of a human.
Right. So it seems like, suddenly it dawns on the reader and to Bruce at the same time that, this is how he survived the screams of the banshee.
Yeah.
And then we get the shocking ending where we see Green Arrow, who, what a natural fit, right? Of course. You hardly have to do anything with him. Of course. Yeah, you hardly have to do anything with him. And you see a power ring with a modified version of a power ring there. We don't see who the person is, but in the opening, Constantine talks about the Green Man. And the Green Man takes an arrow and basically imbues it with some emerald energy, and Oliver Queen, a.k.a. the Green Arrow, fires the arrow into the sky and kills Jor-El by shooting him right in the eye.
Poor Jor-El.
So, of course the thing is, who's the Green Man? And by Ollie being there and by Green Arrow being there, Hal is the logical choice. But if Hal's the logical choice and the obvious choice, why don't we see his face?
I'm sure that's probably a teaser. But another question would be, I mean, not saying that an arrow wouldn't immediately kill somebody if shot in the eyeball, but Jor-El is Jor-El, so wouldn't he have powers just like Kal-El? You know, I think he has powers, so the arrow wouldn't kill him like that unless it was kryptonite, if I'm not mistaken.
Or the magic.
Or the magic. Yeah, you're right.
Because the Green Man says it will make the distance, the magic will do the rest. Only your aim is in question.
Okay. Good point. Good call.
Then makes you wonder, well, is this Alan Scott? Or is it Abin Sur? Or is it Sinestro?
Better yet, it could be Simon Baz.
I knew that was going to come in there somewhere, right? But they call him the Green Man, and I part of me wants it to be Hal because of Oliver Queen being there, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm not so sure, because why not just show it being Hal then? Why make a mystery out of it? Because that's the obvious thing, right?
But I will be excited if he has that kind of Merlin spin,
Yeah.
A Merlin type Green Lantern. Oh yeah, I'm down with that.
Yeah. I'm really kind of excited to see how they kind of take the Camelot mythology of sort and spin that with the DC universe. It's really interesting. It's an interesting take.
And I can see why a book like this would get greenlit. I mean, it does have a certain appeal to it.
Sure. And the artwork is great. It's a 12-issue miniseries. I really enjoyed the first issue. I mean, the shocking ending to me was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. But you have a certain amount of artistic liberty and freedom that you get when you're doing a book that's not about the DC continuity that's normal.
And I wonder if this is going to cause a rift between Wayne and Kal-El, thinking that he killed his father.
Right, or right now, Bruce knows that he's the son of Jor-El, but does anybody else? And if he asserts himself, isn't he going to believe him? I don't know.
See, these are good foreshadowing, good questions to ponder moving forward.
Yeah. Like I said, I really enjoyed this book. I like the art in it. I like the spin on things. I love the Camelot kind of mythology tied in here. Black Canary is a banshee. Makes perfect sense. It all fits. They're not doing anything to force something that doesn't feel normal for this kind of a crossover between these different types of worlds.
No, it's very fluid, and Tom Taylor's good at that. He's good at bobbing and weaving, he just takes those certain elements and just ties them all together in a neat little piece, and it, like you said, it has a reflection of what we've known or what we're used to, and whatever you want to call the main DC timeline, and those characters that exist within it. But he tweaks them just enough to where it does make an impactful difference on the overall book itself. Like,
I love that it feels familiar yet new.
Yet new, and that's a good point.
So cool book. Definitely, if you're on the fence about reading it, either wait for the trade or pick it up. I enjoyed it. I'm on the ride at least for the first half.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely be in this one.
And I'll probably
my only beef with these, and I know I say this with a grain of salt. My only beef with these is, everything has to have Batman in it, and I get it. And don't get me wrong, this is a good book, and I like the way they're using him in this. And to me, reading Batman is just, I have to accept it because he's just around all the time. I mean, he's kind of like that. He's just around all the time, and it just seems like all DC wants to do is create books with Batman in it. And Dark Knights of Steel, I mean, it's kind of hard not to put him in there, and I understand why he's in there. Just I'm so sick of it.
Yeah, I get it. I hate him always being. He's always the person that figures it out. He's always the person that is the one that comes in and saves the day, and that becomes a bit of a trope at this point. But I'm along for the ride, and I'm looking forward to how this story is going to unfold. And I think that's why I said, I'm on for at least the first half, because if it becomes a Bat Love Fest, then I'm probably going to be out.
Yeah. Much like the next one, DC versus Vampires.
Yep. So speaking of that, we'll take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll find out whether the DC Vampire book is good or does it suck.
No pun.
This is Razor, and you are listening to the blog of Oa. You need to keep listening, otherwise I will track you down with all of my skill, and you will feel my wrath.
So last month, being October, we had Halloween, and right around that time, we got the first issue of another DC miniseries. This one by James Tynion. And this one is yet another kind of an alternate take on the DC universe, DC versus vampires, excuse me. So, Phil, what did you think about this one? This one also had a shocking ending.
Yes. So when you, I didn't plan on reading it at all. Matter of fact, I even forgot it came out, and you would text me, hey, do you want to record? And you told me what. And then I guess I think you texted me what books or whatever. And I was like, oh, crap, I haven't even thought about it. I didn't even know that book was out. I didn't even know anything about that book. Because all you ever look on Twitter is how much DC copies Marvel, Marvel copies DC, whatever. People talk about it back and forth. So I just kind of figured it was just not one of those run-of-the-mill books and everything. But, I knew we were going to talk about it, so I downloaded it. And I enjoyed it. I'm into Dracula, and I'm into the vampire lore much more than I am like zombies and the Walking Dead stuff and like werewolves and everything. So, but this one was really, really cool. Again, much like I said about the last issue, I'm tired of Batman being around all the time. But it was cool. I liked the book.
Yeah, and I guess if there's any book that DC was going to put out that I would expected to see Batman in, it's a vampire book, right?
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
But, this one starts out, and I immediately got excited about this when I got to the third panel, when it said I, Vampire. And then I realized this is Andrew Bennett from the I, Vampire books. I'm like, oh my gosh, how long has it been since we've seen Andrew Bennett on a page?
Right.
And it's interesting as it starts out, because it almost looks like the Western in the beginning, because he's all bundled up and it has this big wide-brimmed hat. And I'm thinking, man, I didn't think this was in the Old West. And then as it unfolds, and you realize it's Andrew Bennett. Well, he's protecting himself from the sun. And the guy's on his way to the Hall of Justice and gets hit by a car, and he starts bursting into flames. And who shows up at Hal, and he's like, "Hey, it's okay, everybody. We've seen people spontaneously can burst into flames before, right? This is just another normal day here at the Hall of Justice," which I thought was pretty funny. And Hal has kind of this light tone to him. And I got to call out the Otto Schmidt artwork. Again, somebody who I'm not real familiar with, but I thought his art style was really kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. And I really, really like how they put the Wonder Twins, or one of the Wonder Twins, in here.
Yeah.
And I like how they're written. I've always been a huge, huge fan of the Wonder Twins. So it was cool to see Zan pop up.
Well, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to review this book, because when I read it, I was like, oh, geez, I bet you Phil's gonna maybe like this book, but maybe not, as the story unfolds.
That was one of the top reasons, and I like the quirkiness between him and Hal.
Yeah,
the action was fun and humorous.
And basically, what Andrew Bennett tells Hal is that there's basically a war coming, and the vampires are not holding back, and they're not going to keep this delicate truce that exists between mankind and vampire kind, because the queen of the vampires is dead, the vampire elder, and she set the tone for all the other vampires that they follow. And now that person's gone and she's been murdered, who knows what's going to happen. And as the story's kind of unraveling, he tells the story, and he tracked things down to the Hall of Doom. And there you see this really gruesome sight. I mean, you see all of these villains, these DC villains, lying in pools of blood, including Sinestro. Pretty gruesome sight.
That's Solomon Grundy laying there? I guess it is him, right?
I think it's Solomon Grundy. Some of them, it's that gruesome that you can't really tell who some of them are. But it certainly looks like Solomon Grundy by his size. Just a ghastly sight. And here, Andrew Bennett uncovers what's going on is that there are plans that are there and that they're going to block out the sun and basically turn humanity into a giant slaughterhouse.
That's been done before. Final Night, they tried to do that.
Yep.
Hey, I noticed that one of the villains that actually looks normal in here is Black Manta.
Yeah, yep.
I mean, he's dead, but he looks normal.
and of course, what villain is there to kind of be humanity's savior but Lex Luthor?
Of course.
And basically a one-armed Lex Luthor. But his blood, he believes, is very important to unraveling the mystery of what's going on, and it can be proved to be weaponized to save humanity. And so he kind of entrusts Andrew Bennett to deliver that to the Hall of Justice, or to deliver it to somebody who can save them. And go ahead.
In true Lex fashion, let the world know it was me who saved them.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then Grodd shows up, and you find out that not all of the villains are dead. Some of them have been turned. So Grodd has been turned. Scarecrow's been turned. The Riddler was turned. And then Andrew uses the syringe with Lex Luthor's blood in it to destroy the Riddler. Turns him into a pile of ash. And he escapes. He was being pursued by the Cheetah, who was also turned. And it shows him kind of sneak his way across because, they now know that he knows their secret. So he's talking about their agents being everywhere, and you see Green Arrow on a rooftop watching him from afar. And you'd seen him earlier in the issue, too, when he first was on his way to the Hall of Justice.
And then we go back to the hospital room.
Yep, go back to the room, and they're there talking. And then Zan lets out the fact that the rest of the heroes are there. Hal had told Andrew Bennett that he was basically the only one there and that they were out on a mission. And Zan lets slip that, no, they're here. And so then we find the turn that Hal is one of the vampires. He's been using his power ring to protect him from the sun's rays in the ultraviolet light. So he's the perfect double agent.
Smart.
Then he makes a giant construct of a blender, and then you hear Zan's final words. Form of a smoothie.
Good one.
And what has
That's
become
so mean, man. That hurts.
Isn't it though? It's I saw that and I was like, oh man, I know how much Phil loves the Wonder Twins. This is going to be brutal for him to have to watch this.
I like the form of a smoothie. What went through my head at the time was like, form of a blender.
and then Hal whips up a coffee cup and he starts drinking Zan.
It's disgusting.
He even says, it's a bit watery. And then he reveals to Andrew, the whole plot, a little bit about what's going on, and he destroys Andrew. And while he's drinking his Bloody Mary,
Bloody Zan,
and he cleans up the mess just as Aquaman shows up, and he says, "Hey, there you are! Batman called a team meeting." And Hal's like, "Oh, sorry, Arthur. I was just washing up. I ate something that didn't agree with me." and he reinforces that nobody knows where Oliver Queen is. So I want to know if Oliver Queen is turned as well. Are we going to have hard-biting heroes?
That's a good point. And did you notice that the Batmobile looks like the new one off the movie?
Yeah, kind of. It looks very much like the Batman thing. Yeah. But as we find out, Batman's going to save the day because where did the syringe get turned over to? To Batman.
Of course. Lord. Yawn.
I really wanted to see Batman be the bad guy.
Well, but then again, it's been done before, right? I mean,
yeah.
Isn't he the bad guy? I mean, that debate goes back and forth ad nauseum.
Well, we know that that there's somebody who's the mastermind for this, and Hal's on the phone with somebody. And it's funny as he's talking on the phone, he goes, "I have to take care of Zan as well, the Wonder Twin." No, that's the sister. No, right. That's the monkey.
So who do you think's pulling the strings?
I don't know. It can't be a member of the Justice League because they would know who Zan is when he says he took care of Zan. So at this point, I don't know. It's a good mystery right now. I was kind of hoping the Batman was the big bad, but that can't be the case. Because again, Batman would have the perfect cover. He goes out at night,
Right. And Batman's Batman. He's a perfect character.
Yeah. I just don't want to see this be a case of all the heroes that we know have gone and turned into vampires, and it's up to Batman to save the day. If that's the case, I will be sorely disappointed.
Well, it's just another regurgitated tale. It's been told and told and told, Right. So but Tynion's a good writer. So, this could have an altogether different spin on it.
Exactly. I didn't expect Hal to be a vampire. I was fully on board that he was one of the non-turned. Because when you see the scene with the Legion of Doom, you have to start thinking, well, the heroes have turned too. Some of them have been turned.
Sure.
So I was caught off guard with Hal being a vampire.
And a lot of them weren't in here. Wonder Woman wasn't in this yet.
Nope.
The Flash isn't around.
Yeah. The Flash to me would be if the Flash gets bit, it's over with.
Yeah, he could circle the planet and bite everybody. Nobody even know what hit him.
Right, exactly. He'd be like, I think I just felt a mosquito. Oh, wait.
I want to suck your blood now. Get ready.
You're just my type. Oh, positive. So
yeah, another good book.
Yeah,
DC.
Another fun book. It's an odd feeling to think and realize that I'm enjoying these kind of Elseworldy books more than I am the DC Universe proper books.
I'm the same way. I don't read anything besides the Green Lantern book, but I don't have any clue what's going on anymore in DC, in the main DC universe. And I'll take it a step further. I honestly don't care because I don't feel like that's where their good writing's at anymore. It's stuff like this that I think is good, because they do the same thing over and over and over again. If you want to call it the main DC timeline,
Is there even a main DC timeline anymore?
Well, yeah, and then there's that. You could argue that's like tomato. There's probably good points on both sides to say there is, but I don't think anybody. The only person to be able to tell you that would be the publishers. Well, yeah, it's this, but you have to look at it like this. Well, then it's not that. Then if I have to look at it like that,
right.
I'm looking at it the other way. It all depends on your perspective,
Yep.
And the bigger question is, does it really matter anymore?
True.
I remember at one time when we read comic books a long time ago, you didn't get a sense of a main. You had crossovers, but I don't think you really had the meat of the main DC timeline until I'd say probably in the 80s, maybe late 80s, 90s.
Yeah, I think I always felt a sense of connectedness because of the Justice League book, and there was always, I think, more continuity about referencing what was going on in an individual character's book.
Right, right. And I remember that happening a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a sense of loosey-goosiness right now.
Yeah.
But again, another winner. So if you haven't picked it up yet, I'd encourage you to give it a shot.
Yep, definitely do.
All right, we got one more book to talk about, so let's take a quick break and come back and talk about Justice League Last Ride number 7. Well, we recently had the last issue of Justice League Last Ride, Chip Zdarsky's magnus opus on the Justice League. And again, another Elseworldy type book. This time, we've got the conclusion. Darkseid seems to be triumphant, but of course, things aren't over until Batman sings.
Thanks.
Yeah, I knew you would want that. But again, another great issue. It ended with the reveal of Martian Manhunter and his spirit being there. And what we find out is that Martian Manhunter's consciousness didn't die when his body died. And now that Darkseid is fueled with Green Lantern energy, Martian Manhunter's drawing upon some of that energy to become basically a living construct.
I like how they show him choking out Wonder Woman right there.
Yeah, Darkseid chokes out Wonder Woman, and then Martian Manhunter and kind of takes over her body and starts kicking butt.
I will say that my Omega Lantern Darkseid is awesome, and I wish they'd keep that around.
Yeah. I would like an Omega Lantern Darkseid figure, but
oh god, yeah, I'd buy that in a second. Super cool looking too.
And then the next scene to me, if I have one criticism of this issue, it's this next scene. Cyborg Superman merged with Brainiac, goes at Superman with a kryptonite blade. So he's flying towards Superman at, obviously pretty darn fast speed, right? And Batman, who is a considerable distance away, somehow magically is able to jump in front of him and stop him.
It's worth mentioning that Batman is not invincible.
Right. He takes one for the team.
He does.
But he manages to get some what looks like plastic or C4 or something stuck onto Cyborg Superman / Brainiac, and Superman lights it up with his heat vision and sends him flying.
I still like Cyborg Superman Brainiac combo.
Yeah, it's a neat mix. Again, one I'm surprised we haven't seen a lot before. But Superman is there trying to help Batman, who's gotten this kryptonite knife in his side. John sees it, and while Darkseid is fighting Martian Manhunter, he tries to go and he helps Martian Manhunter does. So you have John Stewart and Martian Manhunter together in a cool scene. John basically makes Martian Manhunter supersized. He's basically John's willpower infused into Martian Manhunter, and they go at Darkseid. And then the scene I was waiting to see, something to this effect, was Hal harnessing the energy for himself, rising above, taking the fact that he doesn't have any power ring right now, and he basically grabs the willpower and gets his ring back.
Yes. I was waiting for Lobo to show up. That was the scene I was waiting for.
Yep, and boy does he. He comes on to Wonder Woman, and he kind of lost his head there for a second.
Such a great character.
Literally.
Literally.
But we find out that Darkseid has a plan, and he is basically building a whole bunch of bombs that he's going to boom tube to Earth and lay waste to Earth.
Yeah, and the history of Darkseid being Darkseid, and I don't know, maybe a listener can answer this question. What's his beef with Earth? Is it just because that they got the heroes on there, like Superman and them, and is that his only beef with Earth? I mean, now in the Snyderverse, I mean, it's a somewhat different take on what his issue is with Earth, because he has a vendetta against it because of what happened before. But like in the comic book world, I mean, does he have the same beef with it?
It seems that way, and if only it's because he's been bested by Earth's heroes. Maybe that's the reason why. Yeah, maybe.
How many times now?
maybe that's why. I don't know. It sounds as good a reason as any, though.
Right.
And then we get another really cool moment for Hal. The Justice League is there, and they're looking at all the things that the Darkseid is doing, and from behind them, you hear a voice saying, yeah, well, first you have to go through the Justice League. And Hal's there, and he has summoned an entire Justice League built of constructs.
Super cool. That's a great image right there, too.
Yeah, I love it.
That page is great. Even from Barry to Superman, just with his cape. I mean, they all look great on this. This person's got great art.
Yeah, and I love he's got you see some members of the Justice League you don't see often, like Dr. Fate, and you see Vixen, and there's just Red Tornado's there, Zatanna, the Hawks, just a really, really cool image. And so Hal basically starts attacking Darkseid and all of his parademons and everything And Hal's going toe to toe with Darkseid. He's throwing punches, and the constructs are attacking, and John's there with Martian Manhunter, and Hal and John are basically kicking butt and taking names, while Wally is down there kind of trying to protect Batman and Wonder Woman and Superman, because the Kryptonite Blade obviously has an impact on Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really cool is John Jones, Martian Manhunter, goes down and talks to Superman, and there's a conversation there, and he basically tells Superman, they need you and Wonder Woman. I'll take care of Batman. You got to go and enter the fight, because really, it's too much for John and Hal to do on their own. So he basically allows for a moment with Batman and Martian Manhunter to kind of reconcile what happened that led to Martian Manhunter's death. But Hal's he's going at Darkseid hard, because he doesn't like the fact that he got used, and he's really, really going to town. And John stops him and says, wait, we got to deal with all these boom nukes. Can you absorb all their energy? So Hal stops the fight from his perspective and starts to, by himself, absorb all the energy from the bombs, as Wonder Woman and Superman really go to town on Darkseid. And it's such a cool panel of Wonder Woman and Superman punching Darkseid in the chin at this exact same time, and he just goes flying.
His neck's bent back in an awkward angle.
Yeah. I don't know how he didn't snap his neck there. And he basically, he's like, I'm going to cut and run, because my bombs are about to go off. And Hal's like, oh, no way, dude. You're not getting away from me. And so he goes after Darkseid, and Superman tries to stop Hal, and Hal's like, no. I'm doing this. There's no chance. Darkseid, you're not getting away. And he says, no blinking chance. And he uses the bombs to take out Darkseid. So he uses Darkseid's weapons against him.
And it's typical arrogant Hal Jordan too. And he's spot on with it.
Yeah, great characterization. I love the fact, I think as Hal fans, we sometimes struggle when, Hal becomes the guy that gets taken out early, is the butt of the joke, or he's the guy that's but possessed and controlled by the bad guy. And admittedly, when it happened here in this series, I was like, oh, come on, really? But I was like, I trust Chip Zdarsky. I think he has reverence for these characters too much to make somebody a patsy and not give them the chance to redeem themselves, or to show, that they're stronger than that, and that was the bad guy for an instant being stronger than the good guy. And right. The image of Hal flying away from the explosion, again, another cool image.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I got that saved in a screenshot. I'm going to use that as a wallpaper.
Oh, yeah. Definitely worth it. So Hal comes back down to Earth, and then you see a really neat moment between Clark, Kent, Superman, and Hal. And that's a dynamic that is, I think, doesn't get used enough. I think that it's really interesting that, Superman and Hal can relate to each other on a level that a lot of other heroes can't, because Superman carries the burden and the weight and responsibility on his shoulder because he wants to save the entire world and everybody in it. And Hal's the same way. So I think they have a relationship dynamic that's different than some of the other heroes.
Agreed. And that's a good comparison. But in that moment is pretty touching between them.
Yeah,
they're both sacrificed,
Yeah, and Hal's basically, he's not angry now. He's I think disappointed and upset that he got used. And you can tell by the way that Hal's looking down. He won't make eye contact with Clark, and the small font. It isn't that he's mad that he got used. He's upset. He's like, he used me, Clark. And then Superman does exactly what you would think he would do. He put his hands on Hal's shoulder and said, it's okay. It's over. Let's go home.
And then we fast forward 1 month later.
And we see more conversation about what's going on. And this is where it's interesting, because it almost feels like this book ties into DC Universe continuity proper, because they're talking about the United Planets again and how things are finally back to normal a little bit. There's a clean slate for the Corps. Apocalypse's new Oa, because Oa's been destroyed. Those kind of things. And that there's basically one Guardian left, and he's going to kind of run things. And then we discovered that John Jones is tied to Apocalypse. He can't leave there. And it's interesting to see him in like an Owen Guardian robe.
And on a side note to what Apocalypse would look like as a new Oa, I mean, the green coming out would look cool, and that could be like where you charge your rings from,
Yeah, it's interesting because it reminds me of how we saw Oa in the Green Lantern movie.
Ah, that's very true.
Where you had the beams of light coming out of the planet kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good call.
And it ends as you might expect. You see the big scene between the Trinity and the rift between Batman and Superman is repaired. And then they talk about how, we can't just be the regular Justice League anymore, and they talk about Justice League Universal. And it almost teases a sequel.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to shift to another book, I guarantee if this continues and it's called Justice League Universal, I'll read it.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It wasn't. I don't want to say it was I can't say it's a deep book, but it felt big and bombastic, like a summer movie kind of thing. And I enjoyed it. To me, this is the action adventure that I look to comics for that pure escapism.
Yeah, that's exactly a good point. On a question about Martian Manhunter, I guess you'd call him the new Guardian.
That's kind of how I look at it, because he's tied to Oa. It also kind of gives maybe a bigger connection between the Green Lantern Corps and the Justice League Universal, in that they have a mobile base now.
Right, because he's wearing a garment that the Green Lantern emblem at the end.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny. This is a better book than the regular Justice League book.
Oh, totally agree. I totally agree. My friend Brian's a big fan of Zdarsky. He's always liked his Daredevil books.
See, I haven't read anything by him. This was my first experience with him, and like I said, to me, most of the time, I'm looking for comics for escapism and adventure and inspirational moments, more so than I need a character that I can relate to. I want a character I can aspire to be, and I feel that with this book. This to me felt like, even though it wasn't a big DC Universe shattering event, it felt like it was a story that had weight and had momentum behind it. Now, maybe is it a little bit of a misnomer calling the book Justice League Last Ride, because it implies it's the last adventure of the Justice League? I guess if you think about how they're no longer going to be called the Justice League and they're going to be Justice League Universal, it technically kind of is the last ride of the Justice League.
Yeah, because then you could shift into another title if that's what you choose.
Yeah,
I haven't seen anything about a Justice League Universal book or nothing like that.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything announced about it yet. I'm hoping. I know DC has not released their February solicitations. I think it might be a little early for something like that to happen that quickly. But if they're going to continue this, I'm on. Sign me up. I'll buy it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love the book. I think it was really well done.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't. This wasn't a deep, meaningful a book, but it was filled with every character. Every character had moments to shine.
Well, and it felt bombastic, like you would think a Justice League book should.
Right. If anything, I would say that Wonder Woman and the Flash were kind of underutilized.
Yeah,
they had briefer moments to shine, but they still got moments to shine.
And it didn't have Simon Bass.
There's your extra bonus, right?
I wouldn't be Phil if I didn't make a jab at Simon.
At least one, right?
At least one. Multiple ones. Hey, at least I'm thinking about him.
That's right.
That should be some kind of, reprieve to the fan base of Simon Baz that are our listeners. I do bring him up. I mean, I could be that guy and not bring him up at all. And see, we probably never talk about him.
He's never far from your thoughts.
He isn't. And that's me being the ever-loving fan of all. So I can bring up his name, and then it appeases the people who haven't heard of Simon Baz in a while.
All right, my friend. Well, my power ring is blinking, and you know what that means.
Good.
We got some listener feedback. I'm getting out of the conversation while it's safe.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's go.
All right, we'll be right back and listen to your listener feedback.
Listen up, all you white circles. This is Drill Instructor Kilowog, and you're listening to the podcast of Oa. And don't you forget it, boozers.
All right, Power Ring, why don't you go ahead and play the first message?
Our first message is from Ken, who has some thoughts about Simon Bass. Transmitting recording in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you for answering my email and comment. I was hoping the comparison between 2015 and 2021 GL comics would make more of a wow, but I appreciate that you saw what I mean, Myron. It's funny, with the recent issue, I feel Simon and Kelly are the best part of the series. The sibling-like relationship is a breath of fresh air compared to the boring plots with John and Joe. Thank you for telling me about the Creeper story. I actually have those trades but haven't gotten to read them. Phil, with your thoughts on Simon, I wanted to share my perspective on the character. As someone who started reading monthly comics when Simon was created, I was excited for him to be my generation's Green Lantern. The origin was mediocre, but I still had hope until they shuffled him into JLA and then forgot about him until Jess became a Lantern. Over the last decade, Simon has been replaced and overshadowed by 3 to 4 Lanterns as well as the 5 Lanterns before him. At this point, I'm sad for him more than anything else. Outside of killing or reckoning him out of existence, what would you do with Simon Bass to make him unique and hold his title? Personally, I would focus on his relationships with Jess and Kelly while trying to give him unique villains. GL generally hasn't had any great new villains since Larfleeze, and most of them are tied to Hal and Kyle.
Hey, Ken, thanks for the feedback. Nice to see you got a great listener out there. So, thoughts on your thoughts on Simon, because I bring him up a lot. Now, the biggest issue I have with Simon overall in general is that I don't appreciate when a writer. Let me rephrase that. It's not that I don't appreciate. I think it's a bad call for a writer to create a character. And if you put it in perspective with Simon, I think I think that character was created for a specific purpose, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hope I'm saying this right, for a certain message, for representation. And if you're going to do that, you have to make sure that that character has resonance, not just with the impact when they're created, but there needs to be a use for that character moving forward, you know? And that's where you got to have progressive thinking when it comes to writing. And so, while I never really was a big fan of Simon when he came out, you know, I'm all for inclusion because I'm all for it's a Green Lantern Corps. Let's get all of them on board. So to answer your question, I mean, the best utilization you could do with Simon Baz is to make a Green Lantern Corps book. You know, you can easily have all the lanterns in there, and you can easily tell stories that encapsulate just about every single one of them. Not just on, it wouldn't even have to be just on Earth. I mean, you could go to other worlds. You could explore other sections of the universe. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and I feel like that's an untapped market for DC to do. But you have to have somebody willing to do something like that, you know, who knows enough about Green Lantern lore, or, you know, maybe somebody who doesn't, but knows about the characters enough to where they could tell captivating stories, you know, and not just ones that are, you know, just hinged on Earth lanterns all the time. So that was long-winded, but that's my take on Simon. So, I mean, call it what you will. I just think that he's been underutilized for so many times that he just flips and flops from here to there. Even in the ongoing title right now with Green Lantern written by Thorne, I don't feel like he's an impactful character. I feel like he's just there for a reason. You know, he serves no purpose other than just a filler. Well, you need to put him in a mold of his own and do it in a good way where you can encapsulate all the Green Lantern Corps, and he can make an integral part of that role.
Yeah, I think that as much as I appreciate Jeff Johns' writing and so on, I think by the time he got to the point where he created Simon Baz, he was running out of creative ideas on how to keep it fresh. And I think he created Simon as an avatar for himself, in a way, to talk about how it was difficult in a post 9/11 world for folks from that
right.
descent, you know, that ancestral background to fit into society and deal with some of the stresses that were created out of that whole series of events. But I think the problem is that Geoff Johns didn't so much show us why Simon was worthy of the ring. I think he went about it in a bad way. I mean, first of all, giving him the gun, that set a lot of people, myself included, off. You had him stealing a vehicle, which that makes him unworthy of a ring, from my perspective at least. So you had that problem right away, and then we fell into the trap of, oh, I've got to make him special and unique from everybody else in a way that really is nonsensical. So you had him so that he could heal other people. Then when they went off and put him in alongside Jessica Cruz, Sam Humphries really didn't know how to utilize Simon, and he kind of made him... He didn't make him a very likable character for the most part.
And he wasn't strong. You know?
And then we got into this whole Emerald Sight nonsense. And we never got an explanation as to why Simon had these abilities that nobody else had. It never got explored because he basically took a back seat in his own book. So I think as Ken points out, he's really been overshadowed. And the problem is now the field is so large, why would anybody choose to do anything with him? And I'm not sure what you do with him at this point. I think if there's any salvation for the character, they've got to come up with a story arc that has some meaning. Don't use him to send a social justice message.
Right.
Show us why he's really worthy of the ring, and give us a meaningful story about his character, not his traits and things. What makes Simon Baz unique from every other ring bearer? Why was... We know he got the ring and it was an amalgam of Hal's ring and Sinestro's ring. But he hasn't gone through a meaningful story arc that really says much of anything about the character. We saw that story that was in the 80th anniversary special, which to me I thought was very, very cringy. The whole thing with him fighting the guys with the red ball caps, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That wasn't exactly very positive either. So if we're going to make Simon have relevance, we need to find some way to make him stand out in a way that is not a caricature. If I like anything about the Thorn run and how they're using Simon Baz, it's in that big brotherly relationship that they started to show between him and Kelly. But I don't like the Kelly Quintella character either. So it's kind of lost on me a little bit, but at least it shows him having a little bit of depth of character. So I think that's a good thing, but he really needs something. If he's not going to be thrown aside and cast aside as he has been, then they've got to find a way to make him stand out, make him do some awesome things that don't look like made up, like Emerald Sight. You give him a special ability thing. Let's not go down the whole Chosen One avenue again. Come up with something good. So thank you, Ken, for the message, because that sparks a good conversation. So we've got another message coming. So Power Ring, why don't you give us the next one?
Our next message is from Rilo. Rilo has a question for Myron and Phil about good comics to use in giveaways. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
I was very excited for the 200th episode. I honestly can't remember what my first was, but I knew the number was going to mean a lot to you both. As I comment, you're only 24 episodes away from eclipsing Volume 2, the longest, in numbers. I recently took a trip to Canada, and it was there in a shop in Edmonton that I finally was able to get my hands on Season 2 number 12. I don't know why my puller of 15 years was short on that issue. Supergirl number 0 was the only other time that had happened, and it finally allowed me to continue catching up. Soon, I'll be able to listen to you guys without skipping segments. I'm still appreciative, by the way, of the time you take to do that here on YouTube. As I write this, a local neighborhood trunk or treat event is this weekend. I'll be bringing my Green Lantern themed Camaro as a part of the show, and don't worry, Phil, as he's been redesigned with a much simpler look and has ditched the Simon theme, which, really, I only used as the natural lines of a car fit incredibly well with Simon's uniform above all others. My comment is that I found myself in a bit of a funk when I realized something. I'd love to give away Green Lantern comics for free as a part of any event the car goes to that isn't strictly a car event. I'd love to have stacks of particular issues to hand out, and I wouldn't have a problem buying these old issues myself in order to share this love. However, I'm stuck with a problem that I think you both may be able to relate to. What issue or issues would that even be? Without getting into a much longer discussion that I'd love to have in voice one day, my first lantern was Hal shortly before Emerald Twilight. I grew up with Kyle, and my opinion on John's run has soured greatly over the years as I become more in tune with realizing creative limitations. I don't like the flood of new Earth lanterns we've received lately and know that I'm going to hate it when I start reading the new volume. If Volume 3 is woefully out of date for both kids and new adult fans, if I don't want to create more John's fanboys and fangirls with Volume 4, and if I don't even have a recent series with everyone receiving good panel time to share, then am I currently stuck with an opportunity that can't be realized? If I'm honest, I think the best call is to start picking up bagged and boarded lots and just start handing out issues. Anything from the last 30 years. If I can get more people interested in the mythos and power ring, hopefully, they'll start looking into it more on their own and start seeing that there are plenty of great stories from different writers over decades that they can start peering into, and I'll start to see fewer and fewer trade paperbacks on the shelves in the coming years as a result. No matter the route, if I do start doing this, I'll have an insert behind the board that points them to different sources of more content, and I promise to include this podcast as the way to stay in current in this year and beyond. You guys can both stay positive while sharing gripes and making jabs, and that's how I feel it should be. Hope to join you both one day for some Kyle reminiscing and what I feel will be a take on the Sinestro Corps and Simon that I'm not sure I've heard here before.
All right, Rilo, thank you so much for that message. For those of you that don't follow Rilo on Instagram, his handle is Camaro GL1, and he's got the coolest car. He had one that really was inspired by the Simon Baz artwork, and he's recently changed it over to more of a classic look. Love both of them. I think they both look really good. I'm a Dodge Challenger guy myself, and my wife and I are going back and forth on, is she going to let me make the car look the way I want to make it look? And I've got some ideas for what I want to do, and I might reach out to him and get some ideas from him as well, just because he's got far more experience than I do. But follow him on Instagram if you're not, because he's got some great pictures of things that he does, different events. And he's got some good questions here about what would you do, what would you give away, for gifts to kids to get them into comics. And I was thinking about it the other day as I was looking over this email. And I know it's hard because, as he points out very validly, Volume 3 is really dated. And if you don't want to go with the Volume 4 stuff, which is the low-hanging fruit, right? You go with the John's run because it's been so successful. I really would kind of lean on the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps book by Robert Venditti, because it did a really good job of showcasing the four main Earth Lanterns and showcasing why they're all cool. And they were lighter adventure stories. There wasn't a lot until the very end when he did the whole plot line with the Black Stars. There wasn't a lot of deep stuff. It was stuff that was pretty much kid friendly, but a lot of action adventure. So that would be where I would start. How would you, Phil?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, I would choose like a grab bag kind of thing, like I think he mentioned it in his comments, and just have maybe like, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know where people are with their money. So if you're gonna go all out, you put 5 different Green Lantern books in a grab bag and you give it out and say, hey, and do whatever you want to do to promote it. But if you're me and I can't afford to do 5 books, and depending on what I can hand out, I don't know where you'd start. I mean, there's such a wide ranging field of Green Lantern, and you also got to remember whatever one you give is going to be the one that may or may not have the impact. So, I mean, if I had to choose, maybe different eras. So, something from the Kyle run, something from Hal Jordan, something from John Stewart, and then do a Guy Gardner in there, that'd be kind of a mix and match, and they can choose which Green Lantern they like the most. Mm-hmm. And pinpointing what issues per year is a little tough to do.
Another one that would be good, I was just thinking about, another one would be, there was a small, it was only 15 issues, but it was Green Lantern the Animated Series as a comic book. And it wasn't an adaptation of the episodes. They were original stories set in the same universe, written by Art Baltazar. And
that's a good point.
Not a lot of violence in them. it sold relatively well. There actually were some books that were included in 2012's Free Comic Book Day. So if you could find a comic shop who's got some of them that would let you kind of borrow them, that would be kind of cool. But that would be another book I would think about.
Well, not only that, I mean, this guy does promos for his car, so I'd assume that he's associated with the comic book stores. I mean, even if you're promoting your local comic book shops, like you said, with the little card in the back with the books, or if you do a grab bag kind of thing, you put like 5 issues in them or 3, whatever you choose, and you put them in a paper bag, and then you put that card on the front, explaining each issue or something, and then you do your promo spots. Local comic book stores, they like that kind of stuff, so they might even offer up free books for you, just for them to have their name on your bag that you're handing out to the general public.
Very true. You might get them to give you some throw some business cards in or something with books to help promote their shop.
Yeah, because we got the blog. You got the blog of OA cards you gave me a while back, and I hand those out to people sometimes, and I even put them up at my local comic book stores on their pin boards.
And I appreciate that kind of stuff. And one of the things that Rilo talks about is how he might be putting together an kind of content to link to Green Lantern content for people, and talked about linking to us, which I appreciate greatly. It helps to promote the show in any way we can. So I appreciate any of our listeners who are promoting the show to other comic book fans and bringing people into the fold. Definitely appreciate that.
He's a cool follower. I love looking at his posts,
Yeah, and that car is great looking.
We need to get him on the show sometime. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, and he actually talks about some things that he's got some ideas of things he'd like to talk about. So maybe we'll do another, You Are the Core segment at some point. Maybe we'll start that back up again.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Cool. All right, Power Ring, why don't you tell everybody how they can be a part of the show?
You can become a part of the show by leaving a message up to 1 minute long on our voicemail line. Call us at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can also email us at podcast@blogofoa.com. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, fellow Owens, welcome back. Episode number 202. Done. Great episode with some great issues to talk about. I know I mentioned Simon Baz a lot. That's for all our Simon Baz listeners. Just to know I'm showing you some love.
It was a Simon Baz Batman episode.
It kind of was. I mean, when isn't it a Batman episode? Like I said, he appears in everything. He shows up on our podcast all the time. And mainly because I rail on him so hard, but whatever. No, we talked about good issues. I know Green Lantern 8 came out this week.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that in the next episode.
That'll be after Thanksgiving.
But yeah, it was great to talk about 3 books, not only 3 books, but 3 good books.
3 good books. You're right. Right.
So yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I thought all 3 of them were winners. And if you didn't pick up Justice League Last Ride, wait until it comes out in trade. I'm sure it'll be collected at some point. Definitely a fun read.
Yeah, that'd be a good one to read in a collected.
Yeah. To me, that was a popcorn movie,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really was.
But anyway, we will be back again, as Phil said, in a week or 2 after the Thanksgiving holiday to talk about the most recent issue of the Green Lantern book, and we'll have to pick something else to talk about too, because we need to have something positive.
Hey, maybe they'll drop some more details about the Green Lantern series on HBO Max. Oh, never mind. We'll have to find something else to talk about.
All right, my friends. As always, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you guys hanging around with us and listening to us chat about some Green Lantern comics. Until next time, keep that power ring charged. Take good care of yourselves and those you love. And until next time, make every day your brightest day. The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the Blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can send your emails to podcast@blogofoa.com. You can also find the Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA on Twitter and Facebook. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.